Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Voyage Cast. This is Eddie, your host. I'm here to bring you help beyond the office. In today's episode, I have a pretty cool guest who has turned his life experiences, therapeutic insights, and poetic creativity into a book that's practical enough to help couples in the middle of a fight and deep enough to train clinicians in a therapy room. I'm joined today by Dupre, a licensed marriage and family therapist, trauma specialist, Army veteran, and the founder of the Belief Center for Family Therapy. His book, Kingz and Queenz, came out, I don't know when it came out exactly, but came out recently enough, offers a clear and creative and highly applicable framework for emotional growth and relational healing. It's structured mainly in two parts for the listener, if you're interested. The first part is more about the inner journey, the childhood trauma, irrational beliefs, self-worth, somatic pain, and emotional reactivity. Then the second part is more the relational application, conflict resolution, emotional safety, attachment styles, sex, communication, and partnership. Every chapter ends with real practices, and this is something I really like about the book. It's exercises that are accessible and actionable and reflective. So it's really something you can grab a hold of and make something of. Whereas a lot of books just give you information, it's not quite the same. So one of the things that stood out for this book that I really like, because I think the same way, is the use of metaphor. From lake monsters to fortresses of dragons, shrines, mirror effects, Dupre fuses his poetic storytelling and evidence-based psychology, drawing from CBT, EFT, and the Gottman style and more in this book. So let's get into it, Dupre. Tell me a little bit about you and how you came into this book. I know you always wanted to write a book. We talked about in our previous interview, but why Kingz and Queenz? Tell me a little bit about how you got here.
For sure. Appreciate the intro very much. It was beautiful. Kingz and Queenz was just a culmination of years and years of doing this and doing therapy and meeting with clients. And like I said in the last one, I really wanted to write a book. I always did. And in my journey, I honestly didn't believe in myself enough to do it. And then as I was in this process of being able to, being a therapist and just healing and helping people, kind of learned how to heal my own trauma and help myself navigate through what my own inner beliefs were, and really embodied everything that I was talking about. And then in that process, then kind of started to come the culmination of like believing in myself enough to be able to say, I really can do this. And when you're in those flow states, being able to just have metaphor after metaphor, an idea kind of coming out in session, and then eventually was like, I think I could put this all into a book. And then that's kind of when I started and was like, all right. And it was kind of a 10-year process that I rewrote. And then the last 2 years before it came out in February this year, 2025. And in that process, the last 2 years, I really bunkered down and was like, really like, I'm going to write at specific times. I'm going to keep writing. And then I just tried to do everything that I teach to couples constantly here around how so many couples want their partner to change. And when their partner is going to change, then they'll be now happy. Esther and Jerry Hicks have a beautiful quote. I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but it's basically that if you always are expecting other people to make you happy, then there will always need to be more changes for you to be happy. And that part really spoke to me, and trying to help couples realize, no, we have to change ourselves. And as we change ourselves, that's when our surroundings really start to change. Bowen talks about this in the differentiation of self. And so all these kind of ideas started to come to me. And as they were all kind of coming, and then as I'm teaching and helping clients to see this, it kind of came in like, okay, how can I put this in a way that's structured enough where people don't have to go sit in a therapy session to get the marriage that they want or the relationship they want, that they can get the change and the growth that they want, interpersonally, as well as then help their partner to change in that process too.
I love what you're saying, and that's something that I see, but it's very difficult to communicate that in a book cohesively. And what I liked about the book in how you communicate these ideas, and I mentioned it a little bit in the intro, is that you started this book kind of from the focus on the self. You're mentioning that again. As a therapist, I know this, but for our listeners, like, why start there? Why start on the self? I mean, so many of our couples come in and they're pissed at each other and they're trying to navigate all the chaotic negative cycles. Like, why start in that section? Why start with yourself?
Because if no one changes, nothing's going to change.
Yeah,
if you change, it will slowly change. Or if I change, it will slowly change. If we both change, it will exponentially change. And so we really want to start with ourselves, because that's who we have the most influence over. That's who we have the most power over. We can control our imagination. We can control our thinking process and our focus. And then the more that we reflect that to our partner and to the world, the more that reflects back to us in the ways that we really want.
Absolutely.
And that's really the biggest piece. And then as we, really the process of just evolution, as we change, everything starts to shift and change around us. It has to. Think of any species that comes into a new environment. When a new species comes, then the environment starts to shift to that person. So if you can help yourself understand, or the organism, the species, whatever it is, it's there. Yeah. And then in that space, you have to, and as you start to change, again, everything will start to mold around that. So if we can take control of our thoughts, understanding our focus, understanding our imagination, understand what we're kind of thinking all the time, and perception is everything. Like how we view situations in our own mind really influences how we feel. And then our feeling states dictates our behavior. And so many times it's not actually our partner that's making us mad. It's just our view of what we're thinking about what they're doing. And then there's strategies to help them to see why it's important for you. But that's where most people miscommunicate all the time. And that's that second half of the book of learning how to communicate, to get those needs and to understand those needs. Where the first half helps you to change yourself so you can regulate your emotions, understand what your emotions are telling you, why they're telling you what they're telling you, why you're getting so upset, understanding why your brain and your mind is doing what it's doing, so that way you can actually make sustainable change. Too, because if you just... Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that's so important about the book too, is that you provide such practical information too, that you know as well as I do that when people come in, they're like, well, Dupre, Eddie, how do I do this specifically? And a lot of times, I don't know if you experienced this in therapy school, but we were often taught kind of to lead the client to the thing. I don't know if you do it this way, but I do it this way. I'm very practically minded. So, you seem to be too, especially in the book. It's like, well, they don't know, and that's why they're here. They need us to kind of lead them in a little bit. Yeah,
I completely agree. It was very much that in school for me as well. And it was through so many people asking for tools. I need tools. Right. And at first it was hard to be able to give psychoeducation, to kind of teach in those moments. And then that's really what people were looking for is us to teach them about what it is that they're going through and help them to understand. I really believe that there's 3 phases of knowing, and there's like knowing intellectual information, then resonating with it, and then being able to do it in behavior. And so the more that we can help them understand it and then resonate with it is when they'll do it more in those behavioral situations. And so that's where those practical tools come in. Is you give them and teach kind of the education, which is the reading, which is the understanding. And then from there, then you start to resonate and change based in that information in the subconscious, right? And then that then comes out and reflects in behavior. And I give tons of metaphors of that in the book itself.
Please lead into that, because that's one of the things that I find really interesting. And again, you and I talked about this in our previous conversation, that we both kind of are visual or imaginative types of people. And so for us, we use a lot of metaphors in counseling. And I'd love for you to share a little bit more. I know you use some of those specific ones in the book, and I'd love for you to share some of those examples.
For sure. The lake monster is actually based in a true story, and it shows kind of how our thoughts in the subconscious and our belief systems kind of play out. Basically what happened was I live on a lake, and in that space we're swimming, we have a barbecue, we're having fun all day, and then at the end of the night I'm in the hot tub with one of my friends, and we're sitting there, and as we're in the hot tub, I'm like, hey, let's jump in the lake. And he's like, no. I'm like, come on, man, let's jump in the lake. And he's like, no. And I'm like, chicken, come on, let's jump in. he won't do it. It's it's late. And I'm like, well, why? We've been in it all day. And he's like, well, I don't want to get in because I'm scared of lake monsters. I spit my drink out. I start laughing, and I'm like, wait a minute. We've been in the lake all day. This doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, wait, time out even more. Is this rational or irrational, right? Irrational would be you like mythological creatures, something that's fiction-based, like unicorns and Bigfoot. Now, some people do have beliefs that Bigfoot is real, especially here in Washington.
I'm sure they do.
But I don't believe in that, so which makes it irrational. in that space. And then evidence-based and rational thinking would be something that is very true. You know, car accidents do happen. Doesn't mean like every time I get in a car, I'm going to get in an accident, but it doesn't mean car accidents can't happen. There's evidence behind that. I break down a lot of those pieces in the book, just basically on, you know, catastrophic thinking, personalized thinking, overgeneralization, and different forms here. And so back to the story is that I'm sitting there talking to him, and he says, this is completely irrational. I don't believe in lake monsters. I don't believe in unicorns at all. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me the story. Yeah. So then as he starts telling me the story, he says, well, when I was a kid, there was I was watching this movie, and the movie was about lake monsters killing kids when they'd swim at night. And I was like, what? And then so he said, yeah, so ever since then, whenever I go to jump in at night, I then feel this pit in my stomach and this anxiety, and I automatically tell myself a lake monster is going to kill me, and I won't jump in. I said, well, time out. Did you just hear yourself? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay, so the trigger or the antecedent is me asking you to jump in at night. You had an automatic negative thought. We call them ants. And so, which is then in that space, a lake monster is going to kill me. In that space, then what happens? Then you feel anxiety. You feel the fear in your body, the panic, the worry. And then, of course, I can't jump in. Okay. And so, but the trick is you don't actually believe in lake monsters. So we have to challenge the fear. We have to understand the fear and first say, I'm safe. In that space, I am completely safe. I don't believe in lake monsters. Well, what's really happening here? Well, what's happening is that I just was telling myself something out of a belief system that I have, that lake monsters are real, even though that they're not real. It was just based in a memory out of a perception of the memory, which, I mean, is this whole kind of idea. So then in that space, you can tell yourself, I'm safe. And then from there, okay, well, what am I really afraid of? I'm scared that it's dark and I don't know what's in there. Well, in Washington, we don't have alligators or snakes that are going to kill us at night. We're down south, maybe. Exactly. And so here, we don't have that. So you are safe. We're in the ocean. Maybe there'd be sharks or other things. But again, in a lake, we don't have those here. And we were swimming in this lake all day to make matters worse. And then in that space, well, if I jump in and there's fish, the fish are going to disperse, they'll swim away. And I've jumped in and kicked some of them a few times, and they swim away. If you jump in and you've ever touched seaweed, it does freak you out a little bit, but it's just grass. If you touch the ground, it's just the earth. So what am I really afraid of? And I'm really only afraid of the fact that I don't know what's in there, and I have this belief that's stored in my subconscious from a childhood memory that there's a lake monster that's going to kill me. Now, if we can also flip it and start seeing the positive of this situation too, of like, well, what good would come if I jump in? Well, I'd shock my nervous system. I'd release serotonin and dopamine in my mind unconsciously because I'd be doing something fun with my friend. This is kind of a weird one a little bit, but I actually get to break the rules in kind of a healthy way by jumping in at night, which maybe not isn't the best thing to say, but my neighbors might be mad, but it's still fun. Like we get that kind of that situation to kind of do something we're not supposed to in kind of a healthy way together. We get to create this memory. And then he said, okay, well, riddle me this, smarty pants. And I started laughing. I said, what? And he's like, how come I've convinced myself to jump in a few times, and in that I get this surge of electricity starting in my feet, goes through my whole body, and I have to jump out. And I said, yeah, that's a lion and a gazelle. That's your unconscious communicating the adrenaline to you. You're the gazelle, and the lion is the lake monster. And in your mind, you've convinced yourself somewhere in this lake, there's a lake monster. I don't know if it's underneath this dock I'm at, or if it's somewhere out here. So I'm going to jump in, and then I'm going to get out as fast as I can. And then what happens is, as soon as you jump in, the unconscious releases the adrenaline, the cortisol. Cortisol is the sixth sense, hypervigilance, paranoia, and then the adrenaline, the fight or flight response. You feel it in your feet first. And I said, I bet you, because in the movie, the kids were getting pulled down from the lake monster from their feet. And he said, how'd you know? It's because the adrenaline starts in the feet and goes through the whole body, and it starts there. And that's the physiological response to then now the psychological that's happening in that space. And so, which is kind of somatic, your awareness in your feet. And then in that, you get that surge of adrenaline, which is the electricity, and you have to jump out. It's because your body doesn't know if it's, again, right under you or if it's somewhere else. And that's the fight or flight response to keep you safe. Me too. And it was such a fun story. And then we stood next to the edge. We said, you're safe. We went through that process. We challenged the fear. There's nothing there. We went through the process of this will be fun. This will be good. We used the imagination to enjoy the moment. And then we jumped in. And then when we jumped in, he said, you're safe. And then he was able to get out. He was able to feel himself. We were able to breathe and then jump back in and be able to have fun in that moment and understand that this experience was there for joy and for fun, not to keep us just alive. Right, and the more that we can understand these in all of our life and everything, if it's, going to a friend's party or if it's, doing something that's really important to us, the more that we can change our thinking patterns, which then leads to then fun experiences and growth and health and all sorts of ways.
Right.
Yeah.
So another theme that stuck out to me is the idea of emotional homeostasis, that our nervous system clings to what's familiar even when it's unhealthy. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and kind of what shows up for individuals before it even touches the relationship?
Yeah, I completely agree. The homeostasis basically never wants to change. Systems don't want to change. They're kind of in place, and it's kind of, there's a lot of theory kind of going back into internal family systems and all sorts of different pieces around like why systems don't want to change. And it really goes back to survival. It goes back to safety again. And if we change, there's this unconscious fear of, I don't know what's going to happen on the other side. So if I change this behavior, if I change myself, then in that space, I don't know what's going to happen. So, and that's why a lot of times we want someone else to change, and I don't have to change. You just have to change, and then I'll be safe. Because if you change, then I won't keep getting hurt. But in reality, that doesn't mean anything. And so the other person kind of fights that. And there's, first order and second order change. And then but in that process, if I change, then again, I will be able to start to move that system. And think about, like, I was taught this in school of like the solar system. If one planet were to shift, the whole system is going to then be changed. If one part of the system changes, then now everything has to then adapt to that new gravitational pull and what that would look like. And so if we can do that in ourselves, then things will start to shift. If you plant a plant in a garden, then now the whole garden will eventually start to shift and you'll start to see something different. Or plant a seed. You plant a seed in an empty field, and then eventually it could turn into a forest. And when it used to just be an empty field.
So that's very familiar to me in maybe what I described to some of my clients too, is that, we can make sometimes single-handedly the biggest difference in our marriage by simply affecting ourselves. Yeah. And that's, that's like the first part of the book. And that's partly why I like it, is because it really does focus on that precursor, because without that, you're really left blaming and deflecting.
Yeah.
And then those unmet needs never get met. Yeah.
And then people are hurt because you're just blaming and you're deflecting and you're putting it on them versus it's a me thing. And our habits, Stephen Covey made an amazing book. And in that space, what is it called? The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yeah. And in that space, he sold millions of copies. And in that, you have to change your habits. And when you change your habits is when things shift. So that's why I did a lot of those practical examples is that if we can learn how to change and break our habits with something practical, then in that space, then we will change. And then as we change, then I can then help model to them. And then in that space, then they will change based on the fact that they see that I'm changing. There's now an incentive for them to change versus me just saying, why don't you change? Or how come you never change? And most people don't understand that process too, of the communication of what we're saying, which also leads to not having them change. Yeah. And if I do this and I change myself, if I can understand my emotions and understand what I'm thinking and what my habits are, then of course, then I can change.
So that brings me to a question then, is how hard is it then for people to, who've never been given like a good language of emotion, like how hard is it for them when you get them in your office to then get into that process and to start experiencing those emotions? Like just what do you think about that?
It's not as hard as you would think if you're good at being able to bring it out in them and helping them to notice, because they're feeling all the time anyways. We're just taught in the society to numb. We're taught to numb with scrolling or drugs or alcohol or, pleasure in some sort of way versus listening to the emotional system. And when we listen to the emotional system, the unconscious, we can learn it. So people feel here in session all the time, and you can notice like they're tearing up, or you can feel their panic. And then what do you feel, right? And then that's the state of being that they're in based in the emotional response. My friend was really anxious, and he was in a state of anxiety when I started to talk about let's jump in the lake to do something fun instead of of him seeing it as fun, he saw it as terror. He saw it as death. And that's a state of being. And so when in here, we can help people to recognize what their emotions are. In the book, I try and help that process too, around understanding how the unconscious is talking. And we have what's called neural pathways in the brain, and the neural pathways are things that we learn at different ages to kind of either do good behaviors or bad behaviors really, really quickly. I'll give a small little example if I can. A 4-year-old is sad and watching his parents drink. When that 4-year-old now then creates in their mind what's called a neural pathway. It's synapses from two parts of the brain that are kind of now connected. And then what happens is that now there's a metaphoric highway in the brain that's there. It's not open and active, but it is built. So now fast forward, that 4-year-old's now 16. At 16, what happens is now they're sad and they tell their friend. Their friend says, oh, I got a great idea, let's drink alcohol. So then what happens is they now drink. And then because they drink, they now feel better. And then now they feel better, their state has changed, they're happy, they're fun, they no longer they don't feel sad anymore, they're happy. So they numbed the emotion with the alcohol. And so then now that highway is now active. So then what happens is that now anytime the nervous system says I'm sad, then what happens is the brain will start to say, the conscious mind, the inner dialogue, there's the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. Unconscious is the unemotional system. Subconscious is the filing system, our memory bank, where all our thoughts are, all our memories, every book we've read. The conscious mind is the inner dialogue, and the subconscious and unconscious are kind of together. So unconscious says I'm sad, based in something in my senses or a memory. And then now what happens is the conscious mind says, I need to drink. If I just go get a drink, I'll feel better. And then this is how kind of addiction forms really easy, and people do all sorts of behaviors pretty negatively really, really quickly. This is that they're constantly kind of in this cycle. Oh, I'll just scroll. And they grab their phone and they start scrolling, or they then go and drink, or they smoke, or whatever the neural pathway is they've developed. And so when we can form new habits to pay attention to our emotions and know what they are, then we can put in what we want out of those places of whatever that is. So if I'm angry at a partner's behavior, I can learn to control my anger and then communicate my needs so I don't hurt them with my anger. Okay. Or I'm sad off of a behavior, and I truly believe sadness means I need to take action. So then in that, well, what's an action plan I can take? A lot of times the action we take is criticize or attack or say something negative or blame, our partner, versus saying,
we've seen that plenty.
Exactly. So the more we can help them to understand their emotions and their system and what's going on with them, the more that we can teach them, the more that we can have awareness and understand ourselves, the more that we can then grow and change. And so I have a metaphor in the book that I call awareness, model, and then repetition. And so when we're self-aware of our own emotions, our own behaviors, and where things come, and where our models come from, which a lot of people blame their parents. It's not always parents. It could be siblings. It could be coaches. It could be friends. It could be teachers. It could be anything in childhood or anything at any age develops a new model. And then from there, the more we repeat the model, the more that highway becomes active. And it becomes stronger and faster. And so think about most people drive home on the same path every single time they go home after work. And that is their neural pathway they developed out of safety. And so they do that over and over again, just unconsciously. And then they're on autopilot again, unconscious, just going about their day. And then what happens? And so once we're aware, we can put in new models. Once we put in new models, then we practice those, and then eventually we have change. I'll give one more metaphor there. Is that in that space is think of an athlete. Professional athletes are amazing at sports because they practice. And then when they get into the game, they now go unconscious because of all of the senses and all the other pieces that are around. And then everything they're practiced shows up. This is why Kobe was known for the Mamba mentality and, his amazing work ethic. If I practice more than everyone else, it will show when I'm in the game. And it did. That's why he was one of the reasons he was so great.
Yeah, he's one of the great, him and Jordan, right? One of the greats.
Yeah, exactly.
Those guys worked harder than anybody.
Exactly. And so, and that's what we have to do in our own emotional self. And if we can understand our emotions and why they're telling us something, then we can understand our purpose. Then we can understand why we're doing things. And then we can understand how to make change in ourselves, which will motivate people around us to want to change because they see the change in us. And then our identity shifts, our character shifts, our emotions shift. We can learn from them, and then we can find ourselves in way healthier ways of being.
That's a big ripple effect, isn't it? That when we get into that kind of expert level of self in some sense, not in the narcissistic sense, but like in a really challenging sense of challenging our homeostasis, challenging our preconceived notions or ideas, and really putting the reps in that can really make a big difference.
One of my favorites to do there is just when I'm in the car and someone cuts me off, I just breathe. And I practice breathing in a state when I feel out of control, or a yellow light happens and I want to run through it, and I stop, and then I just start breathing, because that moment's going to be quick anyways. It feels like a long time when you're angry, but in reality, it's short. And if I can practice breathing in that moment there, I'm now practicing and training myself emotional regulation and emotional control. When another situation is stressful, then I also have that same narrow pathway to practice or to then call upon when I'm now in a new emotional state, which we're going to go in and out of states all the time. There's not a lot we can do about that.
Right. That reminds me, when I was a younger man, I was quite the road rager. I'm from Southern California, and I was born with a lead foot like the rest of my family. And I was a maniac on the road. And I kind of had this mentality of like, I'm the king of the road. Don't you know who I am? Like, I never really put words to it. But after I did some evaluation, I mean, what would it be, like almost the narcissism of my driving was really present. Driving's a great metaphor for life.
Yes. Well, it's a great way to practice, because so many people, I mean, it's hard. We feel out of control so much in so many of those situations. And if we can just, relax and breathe, ground ourselves to the moment, ground ourselves there, it's just one small moment that will help. Then when our nervous system does react, and the nervous system is the unconscious, it's what's communicating to us all the time. It's the fight or flight mechanisms. Once you're in that place, and a lot of people don't realize how much we're on autopilot and unconscious all day long, which we're constantly in based in the knowledge that we have. And a good form of that, the unconscious communicates to the conscious mind just by saying you need to go to the bathroom. It says, oh, no, I got to go to the bathroom. And then the conscious mind is, where's the nearest bathroom? The unconscious keeps the heart beating, the lungs filling with oxygen right now, but I can consciously also breathe. And that's what I'm trying to say. One just simple way to practice in a lot of these moments to kind of change those habits now. Oh, I feel anxious based on I'm late to where I need to be. And now I feel anger, because anger gives me a sense of control, a feeling of control, even though I'm not in control of that light or these people in front of me. And then a lot of times we project or misplace the emotion onto people versus just noticing, oh, I'm behind schedule. I'm anxious about what people are going to think if I'm late. So once I name that and feel that emotion, then a lot of that time it just dissipates. It goes away.
Drops down,
Exactly. And then now if I have a skill or practice a skill, well, then now it will change even more in that moment. So the more we're aware of the emotions, the more we can shift, the more we can change and understand
that's something that I find with my clients too, and I'm sure you find this too, is I have so much grace for people because they don't know. I didn't know. We all had to go to school to learn this and get degrees and then study it and practice it in our own personal lives to figure this out. And that's also why I like that there's actionable steps in this book. And was that kind of the same motivation? Because you get people coming in and they're just, I know we said it, but it's like they're so lost sometimes. And even if they do know, it's like, I know, but I don't know how to do it. Like, how do I make this work? And tell me a little bit more about those actionable steps. Is that kind of the goal?
Completely is completely the goal. I've read so many books, and at the end you're kind of like, wow, that was amazing, but then I don't remember what I read.
And now what?
Obviously went in the subconscious. Exactly. Now what? What do I do now? How do I implement this? And if you're not, I heard once that you have to personally put in your mind and like try and teach what it is that you read right away to try and help that process of remembering. But that's still kind of hard a lot of times. So what I try to do is break it down at the end of each chapter. Do this if it's for yourself, or the second half with your partner, there's really practical things you can do with your partner to work on miscommunication, to work on repair, to heal the repair, or to heal from the wrongs, which is repair. And and in those practical steps, it gives you something really to practice that's tangible, which is what most people want when they come here. They want tools. They always say that, I want tools. I want tools. They want to know why this is happening, so they want the information, but then they also need a tool to practice. And with most books I just read them, I'm like, there's no tools. There's no way. I don't know how to put this into being. And then now eventually it will come out, which is one of my favorite things in that, because it is in the unconscious, and eventually when you resonate with the information or understand it enough, it will start to overflow and come out of you. But until then, it doesn't. Can I show a cool metaphor really quickly?
Yeah, please.
this is one of my favorites. And so I don't know if you can tell or see,
Yes.
but and so it's in this. There's actually a mermaid in there. Can you see it?
No, I can see the waves.
So there's a mermaid. Take a quick second. I hope this comes out in video for everyone. So I walked in.
Point. Is it in the top? Like,
yeah. So here's the tail.
Oh,
then there's the body, and then the chest, the face.
Oh my gosh!
The arms and the hands.
Yeah. Now that's all I can see.
Exactly. So I walked in and I was automatically magnetized to this.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is beautiful. This is incredible. And so the artist is there and she's like, do you see the mermaid? And I said, no, what mermaid? And I'm like in love with mermaids, honestly. I love the story of them and what they are. And so I'm like, no, I don't see it. Like, show me, tell me the story. Yeah. And so she goes, okay, well, I'll tell you the story. She said, so when I got done painting it, I showed my mom. And when I showed my mom said, did you draw that mermaid in there on purpose? And she was like, what mermaid? So the artist drew that mermaid in there completely unconsciously. She had no idea that she did it. It was completely accidental. It's so
incredible, actually.
It is. And so, and I immediately was like, Carl Jung and the unconscious. And that's how the unconscious completely works. Is that, and it's all the information we learn eventually will come out. But we don't always know how it comes out. And so she did that accidentally. And I said, there's the most, I paid more for that piece of art than anything I ever had. And I said, do you take payments? Because I paid it off in a year. And so I got it. And that's what a lot of times what reading does is it goes in the unconscious and then it's just there. So this gives us the practical ways with the conscious mind with intention to practice every day with intention to make growth happen faster. So you can rapidly change yourself and then rapidly change the environment. And then now you're happier. Now there's less anxiety. Now there's less depression. Now, again, my big goal with both of these books, my second one is with the publisher right now, is to eradicate domestic violence, emotional abuse, to be able to help change and people to get out of depression and anxiety. And because we have so many tools now to be able to beat this, but we just don't know how to do it. So now there's practically.
Yeah. I'm with you, man. Like, I don't know if it's just me, but like in my master's program, I mean, we learned about all these concepts and maybe how to be with somebody in a room and how to understand these theories. But I feel like on some level that might have been a real lacking on how to present and provide a really practical concept or idea to people who just frankly don't know. There was no context in their life in which they were taught these ideas. And to find a book that has that is, fantastic, first off. But
I appreciate that so much, and I'm honored to be able to have that there. One of somebody I know said that's in their 70s was like, this is what I should have known my whole life, what should have been taught to me by schools and from my parents. Right. And in my practice as a therapist, there wasn't anyone teaching me how to do these things either. I had to learn it on the fly. I had to learn it kind of, and that's another thing I wanted to do with this is to be able to have it in every master's program, to have it in all the psychology departments, is if we can have this all over, all these clinicians now have tools. I gave it to one of my friends that's a therapist, and he was like, this has radically changed how I do therapy already. Because he understands like treatment plans, but doesn't then understand practical steps around those treatment plans or where to put them. And so then he can then pull them out and then be able to have them right away in what it is.
Yeah. Well, and it's a whole new level too, to like learn how to be in a room with somebody and to, as a clinician, I mean, we all learn this in the beginning stages, people who are not in this field don't necessarily understand this, but when you get into the room with somebody for the first time, I mean, you're swimming. Possibly. It's very difficult to figure out how to be in a room with somebody and be as natural as humanly possible and not be weird, let's be honest. And then take the theories and take the understandings and take the education and then evaluate and understand what's happening. So you're in the room, you're trying to figure out what's happening, and then you have to try to implement what the hell to do. Yeah. That's complicated. It's more complicated than people realize.
I agree.
And to have tools like that can really make a big difference.
Yes. I agree, 1,000%.
I want to transition a little bit into this other thought. You wrote in your book about internal versus external validation and how people look to their partners for proof that they matter.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that dependency and how it shows up in relationships and how you help people shift back toward inner stability?
For sure. Again, goes back to wanting everyone else to change versus changing ourselves. And I think that Dr. Chapman did an amazing job with the Love Languages books. I don't want to discredit that at all, but it feels like it's only a part of the puzzle where we're looking to have other people demonstrate love to us that was missing a lot of times in our childhood in different ways out of, again, the perceptions, the belief systems that were there. Yeah. As a kid for myself, my dad was gone a lot. He was in the NFL, and then he was out doing real estate and traveling after he retired. And I always took it as I was a failure. I was not good enough based on the fact that he was gone. And so then I would strive and try and perform and try and do all these things to prove that I was good enough for him to come, and for him to be there. And that was such an important piece. And then once I became an adult, I realized that he actually does love me, and he always has loved me. He just hasn't always known how to show that he loved me. He didn't always know how to demonstrate that. And as a kid, when I was a kid, he really didn't know how, and especially because of the conflict with my parents, that even more then added to what that is. And so then in that, it just was really challenging for him. He loves me dearly. We have a great relationship now. We didn't always, but now we've reconciled and have that. And so, but I was constantly looking for validation from him. I was constantly looking for validation from my mom or from friends or from other people. And so then that's where the love languages were looking for that form of, gifts or words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, or an act of service. A lot of times that mirrors something that one of our parents did. And then in that, when that's an external validation is when someone else is doing something for me to feel good. And so for me to feel accepted, for me to feel loved, is you have to demonstrate this for me. So if you buy me gifts, then now I feel loved. If you do these acts of service for me, then now I feel loved. Versus recognizing I'm loved either way. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I am love. And when I understand that internally and can build my own confidence, then it's so much easier to then demonstrate love to the world. I really believe that I am love, and I don't do what I'm doing to get love from people. I do it because I am love. I want to serve people in kindness out of the fact of my overflow of who I am and what that is. And so, but that's internal. And when you can develop that internal self-esteem, then you don't have to then look to everyone else externally to then give you something to make you feel good or valued. And that's why it's the second chapter. The lake monster is the first because we had to have that metaphor. It's one of my favorite stories. And then I go right into value. It's funny is I grabbed my book just a second ago.
Yeah, there it is.
The Kingz and Queenz.
Love it.
And to go to that chapter because I wanted to go to some of the pieces, and then you brought it up. So
perfect.
Just a couple of the pieces at the end of this. And just some of these. And at the end of each chapter, it's practical exercises. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Yeah, it's kind of coming through.
There's just different aspects. Step one, identifying your current sources of validation. Begin by reflecting on where you currently seek validation in your life. Do you rely heavily on external sources like compliments, praise from others, or achievements to feel good about yourself? Or do you find validation from within, based on your own sense of accomplishment and self-awareness? So the exercise. Write down 3 situations where you felt good about yourself recently. For each one, note whether your positive feelings came from external validation, like praise from someone else, or internal validation, such as feeling proud of your effort or growth. Example, situation, I received a compliment at work about a project I completed. Source of validation, external, from my colleague, compliment. Then step 2, challenge negative self-talk. One of the major barriers to self-worth is negative self-talk. These are automatic, often critical thoughts that diminish your value. Start becoming aware of these thoughts and challenge them by asking whether they are rational or based on assumptions, which I talked more about those, rational and irrational thoughts in the first chapter. So it does build upon itself consistently too.
Right.
So the exercise, I'm not going to go all of these, but the exercise is write down a negative thought you've had about yourself recently. Then challenge this thought by asking yourself, is this true? What evidence do I have that this contradicts this thought? Can I replace this thought with more balanced, positive one? Example, negative thought, I'm no good. I'm not good enough at my job. Challenge thought, is I've had several successes at work and received positive feedback. I'm still learning and improving. And that completely then now changes our state. It changes how we feel. And there's tons of them in each chapter in different ways. And this whole chapter, again, is on your own value and your inner confidence. And in that space, so I talk about all of that, and internal, external, break it down, your confidence, pride. So many people have a really hard time with pride. They think that pride is bad. I'm a huge Laker fan. I'm a huge Kobe Bryant fan. And in that, I don't think there's anything wrong with having confidence or pride in the fact that I love the Lakers. The only thing that I would think wrong there is that if I make myself superior to others and belittle or am arrogant and make them feel less than because they like the Nuggets or they like the Timberwolves or they like the Thunder, that would then be hurtful versus being able to say, well, we have more Hall of Famers. Or we have, and that's just my pride in the fact that, we do. Or we're, now have the second most championships. We were tied for the most before, last year when the Celtics won. And I have a lot of pride about that, or I have a lot of pride in my kids. Yeah. Those kind of pieces of what that is so important in us. We have to have confidence, but there's this misconception that pride is bad.
Yeah. Well, I think it can be confused, and I think you're clarifying that, right? Like, pride can be bad if it's lording over somebody, or there's an arrogance or narcissism associated with it.
Exactly.
It's not lacking humility or anything like that to say if you're Jordan or Kobe to say I'm one of the greatest basketball players of all time. It's like, no, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
Now if it's I'm the greatest and you suck and you're the worst and I'm better than you as a human being, now we have something entirely different.
Exactly.
That's where pride goes. What is this? The old phrase, like pride cometh before the fall.
Exactly.
That's where it comes before the fall, right?
Completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's hurtful. Now it's arrogant. Now it's cocky. Now you're hurting someone else. Now you're making someone else feel lower and inferior than you.
Right.
Versus recognizing no one's superior, no one's inferior. We're all unique. We all have talent. We're all valuable. We just have to know what our value is. We have to know, and when we know it internally, then we get to express it in different ways.
Yeah.
And so all of the metaphors in the book are just internal things that I've just kind of created in my imagination around different kind of pieces and what that is.
Well, that's the beauty of psychology in a lot of ways, is like when you look at all the founding fathers of psychology, whether it's old school or more modern, like Francine Shapiro or Sue Johnson, you have Bowen, and you've got Rogers, and even Freud to some degree.
Carl Jung, tons of them.
All these people, and they're making observations about their world, and then they're working it out with somebody.
Yeah.
So they're using their creative spirit within them to then come to the table with this knowledge, and then over time they develop an expertise around it as they continue to read and develop these ideas and compare them with peers. But what you're doing in such a good way that's very difficult in the psychology realm, and when you read self-help books, is finding those kind of practical elements and using your creativity to then present that. And that's what we do as therapists all the time in the room. We have to anyways, is to bring that creativity to the forefront so that we can be kind of curating for that client in that moment what makes sense for them. And a lot of people don't realize how hard that is. And then to do that, but then think through it and then write it down is actually a whole nother layer to finding deeper clarity in how that even plays out. So getting into the relationship work, you clearly in the book are pulling from things like EFT, Susan Johnson, and Gottman's models. You talk about the cycle.
This is my favorite.
What's the most common loops that people get into when they're cycling? And if you want to expand on any of that too, that's great.
Yeah, for sure. It's the cycle of neurosis, which is this heightened emotional state that we get in. There's mainly two types of attachment. There's genetic and emotional. Okay. Genetic is you with a sibling, you with your parents, you with aunts and uncles, anyone blood related. And then there's also then an emotional attachment. Emotional attachment is you with a friend, a colleague, a lover, a partner. You also have emotional attachment with your siblings and parents and aunts and uncles as well. So I like to think of it as a string holding two people together. And in that space of that like energy string, whenever that is potentially threatened, it provokes fight or flight symptoms in the body. So the unconscious releases from the amygdala, releases, cortisol and then adrenaline. And then in that space, then the body starts to go into this heightened state of emotion. when we're in this heightened state of emotion, then now the ego comes online a lot of times to protect itself, because the ego, the unconscious's job is always to keep us safe.
Right.
So then now, we're then now in this loop where I'm now scared. And what happens in a lot of couples is they'll have a problem. They present a need. And then what happens is, for example, you never help me with the chores. And then because of that, and they feel away emotionally, well, then now the partner then in their mind here is like, well, because of the communication style of you never heard me, or you never helped me, then they hear in their mind, yes, I did. I helped you yesterday. I just did this chore for you. Mm-hmm. So there's automatically a miscommunication there based on what was said, which is a criticism in that moment, which comes from Gottman's 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Yeah. And then in that space, it then is presented where then they now start declaring facts back and forth around, well, yes, I did. And then, no, you didn't. You never helped me here. Yes, I did. I helped you here. And then now they're then in this heightened state, and neither of each other are hearing each other, and then they're responding poorly. Mm. And then now what happens is, again, the ego's online, and then now they're in this extra heightened state, which is called neurosis, and it's like a figure 8, where it just is now an infinity loop. And then in that space, bad happens, more bad happens, more bad happens. This is where couples, at deep extremes really hurt each other. Yeah. In the process too, where they go blank and they'll, eventually kill each other, or snapped happens, because you get into this heightened state of emotion, your mind goes blank. You don't understand what's happening in the moment and who you're with because of the form of projection. And neurosis is a physiological survival mechanism. Or not a physiological, a psychological. We're trying to survive psychologically, not just physiologically. So what happens is couples will fight, and then one couple will want to leave because they're over the conversation, they're done, they're trying to withdraw, they don't know how to get out, they start to leave, then the other partner pursues and follows. And then that's when couples will block the door, they'll grab each other, they'll do all sorts of maladaptive, like unhealthy behaviors there. Sometimes couples will get behind cars and lay down. I'm sure you've heard of couples where they get in their car and then they leave, and then another couple will chase after them.
Oh, yeah.
There's tons of stories that happen, and that's because the brain is in a neurosis. The person that's following doesn't know when they're going to see the partner again. They don't know when they're going to get love again. They don't know, and it's psychological safety. Excuse me. Yeah. So they're trying to kind of save. I want to give a good metaphor. I picture it. I love kings and queens in medieval times. So in that time period, think of the ego is now threatened in some sort of way because of something they said, you didn't meet their need, you now somehow failed them in some sort of way. So the ego feels threatened. So now picture a castle wall, and the ego goes behind its castle wall. Then now it puts all its archers up on the bridge, and they're protecting itself. The drawbridge is up. So now picture a metaphoric rider. The rider is coming up, and the rider is the other person, the lover, trying to get in. But then now that other person is threatened in some sort of way, so they're kind of guarded. And they give now the silent treatment, and the person's trying to get in, they get nothing. They could turn, they could, not say anything. So that could be someone getting home from work and then coming home, and then the partner is in the other room and completely ignores them. Yeah. So it could be that you're, send a text and get nothing back. That's the silent treatment. And so that's crickets. It's because I'm withdrawn from you because you're hurting me. You keep hurting me. And so if I can understand this, then I can then communicate my need. But also, so then, or you'll start getting criticisms back, where then the archers are now shooting, right? Shooting arrows at the person. Right. And so now they're ducking and dodging the arrows, and then they're not hearing, I need to feel safe, or I need to stop, or whatever else. And this is going to be like, you're the one that never helps me. You're always on your phone. You never do this, or I never said this to you. You're the one that said that to me. And then couples will say that they're gaslighting, and they're spinning and all these details. And so, and eventually that first person that's the rider trying to get in will eventually turn and run back, and they'll go back to theirs because now they're threatened. Right. Now, eventually, that first person that was in their castle, they're kind of calm now. They're out of dysregulation, which is why we need to know our emotions. We're dysregulated. Now we're back to our normal state. And then in that place, then what happens? Well, then now I go look for my lover. And then now they'll then go pursue their lover on their horse. And so they're stallion, they go. And then now they're getting the silent treatment, or they're getting shot with arrows. And so then there's this miss back and forth where we're missing each other. And it's called the cycle of neurosis. There's a withdrawer and a pursuer that happens. And it's so common. I've seen it in 18-year-olds all the way up to 90-year-olds in this process here. And it still happens. And it's recognizing the pattern and fighting the cycle instead of fighting each other. What most couples do is they fight each other.
Yeah, that's I tell couples that all the time. Like it's the pattern's the enemy, not the person.
Exactly. I love the Lord of the Rings. It's another really good metaphor. We want to fight the orcs. We want to fight the enemy, not be inside the castle fighting each other. We need to fight the enemy, fight the problem. And there's tons of solutions in the book, practical exercises to sit down and to actually have conversations to work out what the problem is, to understand why, to understand different forms of communication. Just as simple as you never help me with the chores. The real thing, the need there is I feel overwhelmed and want help. Right. Could you help me? I feel sad that there's so much stress in the room because when it's not clean, it does provokes our senses. Right. And I would love to be able to clean this together so we can hang out. I really want to spend quality time with you. And it's those kind of things. But if you say, I really want to spend quality time with you, could you help me with the chores? That sounds so much different than you never help me. Or I'm anxious that you're on your phone. Could we spend time together? I miss you. We haven't seen each other all day. Could we spend time together? Versus, you're always on your phone. Why do you always pick that over me? You never pursue me. So in that, then the mind says, well, I did pursue you earlier and you rejected me. Or I tried to pursue you. I sent you texts all day and you didn't text me back. And so again, I don't hear the need based in the communication style that's happening there versus understanding really that I should be communicating again the need that I'm having. And if we understand our emotions in that system, like we were talking about earlier, then you can understand what your need is to communicate to your partner.
Absolutely. You mentioned something, and I found it again. You use this metaphor of drinking water versus Coke.
Yeah.
To explain how people kind of resist healthy change. So there's like this opportunity for us to learn how to change and have these techniques, but unpack that a little bit. Help us understand what that resistance is.
Yeah, it came from so many people when I give an idea or they ask why or want a tool, and then I give them a tool like deep breathing, and then they say, well, that doesn't work. Or I've tried it, and it's like, well, water is the healthiest thing to drink. If you're trying it and it does work, keep doing it. And if you're telling me it doesn't work, there might be a reason why it doesn't work. And so, and just like you're saying that you don't want to drink water, you want to rather drink Coke, well, that's your choice. And there's tons of tools that we now know science is proving, what the imagination has been showing, and what mystics and all sorts of pieces have been knowing for a long time. We now know so much. And we're in the best, most modern world possible, right? And in that space, we know so much. And so there are techniques that really do work. There's tools that really do work. And that's drinking water is the healthiest. And when we drink water all the time and do a healthier behavior more often, then we get the results we want more often. It's when we're then, drinking Coke because it's easier, because it tastes better, which is a lot of times what we do. We'd rather say, well, you never helped me with the chores and blame versus taking responsibility and cleaning the house again. Or, helping explain in a positive way what the need is versus just responding poorly or negatively to your partner.
Well, that's kind of the homeostasis too, right? Like you're almost defaulting to what you're comfortable with in the dysfunction.
Yeah. Always. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned like spiritual bypassing, how some people will use faith language to avoid emotional work too. How does that play out?
It's hard to describe intellectually, but basically just trying to help people to understand that there's so much that's spiritual. I'm going to be a little biased. I truly believe that we're infinite beings having a human experience. Yeah. And I'm taking that from different people that I've heard that from. And in that space, there's so much spiritual that's happening. Albert Einstein said that imagination is more powerful than knowledge. And in that space, which is fascinating to me because he's one of the most intellectual people we've ever known, one of the smartest men ever. And so much actually comes from the imagination. So much comes from this spiritual realm. And when we can understand the spirit, which is kind of that inner dialogue, that kind of piece, and that like soul, and what our soul is, and that's where our beliefs come from, we can understand these pieces, then that's when we can also change, and we can change. I used to believe I was a disappointment, a failure. That was mainly a belief that I had that was based in my external circumstances, my dad not being there. And, and different things like that happened throughout life. And so then in that space, once I started to understand that process, that's when I could then change and realize I'm not a disappointment. It was never about me.
Yeah.
And that's when I could then develop, oh, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I am, beautiful. I am handsome. I am, I am worthy. I do have insight. I am creative. I can use my imagination, and then start using those things for better pieces. And that's kind of the spiritual work. That's the understanding of self. And when you have that self-awareness and you understand where your models came from, then you can repeat and put in new models to change everything. And that's going back to changing all those pieces. And so when you can understand that different aspect of your spirit and what your soul is saying, now you can find your purpose. And we all have purpose. Everyone on this planet that's here has purpose. There's a reason that we're all here.
I think it was C.S. Lewis that said something like, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. It's one of the quotes I remember. I think that was him. So the kind of the narrative or the arc of the story of your book, in some sense, is starting from the internal self, identifying, kind of exposing, working through those pieces of it. But then the next phase of it is to deepen connection, deepen intimacy. You even have sections on sex. How do you help couples rebuild a deeper sense of intimacy after such breaks of disconnection?
Well, because so many times, once you can start to see that pattern and understand yourself, then you realize it's actually not your partner, it was actually always me.
Okay.
And then in that space, then we can now start to have empathy. And that, as a therapist, it's one of our biggest jobs, is trying to help each other to see empathy, to see why our partner is doing the behavior they're doing. What is the state of being that they're in that's creating the behavior that's being dictated towards you? And so then in that, once we can understand where they are and where I am, that's when I can start to shift that pattern. That's when I can start to shift what's happening and and that's when I can then start to demonstrate love. I can then, it's easier to have no records of wrongs. It's easier to be kind. It's easier to demonstrate love with selflessness versus, being reactive and emotionally charged. And I truly think it's never healthy to let out any negative emotions on anyone, let alone our partner or our children. And so then in that, I'm not perfect at this, but no one is. We all do it, but it's trying to do it less and less and less and less and make it more and more and more of a habit to just hear my emotions, know what they're telling me, and then be able to help them in that situation. And so with couples, when we can start to identify what's happening with us, then now it's easier to then hear and meet them where they are, and then serve them more, or communicate a need in gentleness or in kindness or in love versus critical and demanding, and that's where different aspects of control and anger and all these other maladaptive kind of behaviors start to come in. And so when we can understand these processes and understand that we need to fight the enemy again, not each other. Freud said we're never so vulnerable to suffer as when we love. We're never so vulnerable to experience pain as when we love. And C.S. Lewis also said that if you love, you're likely to have your heart broken or wrung. And in that space, that's what creates that neurosis. And it's because we love so much. So many times people don't realize that their partner's behavior, a lot of times because they love you, they just don't know how to get you to change. And then because they don't know how to get you to change, and they don't know how to change themselves, then of course they want you to change. But if we can understand how we can change, and then we can demonstrate and show and model that, which goes back to modeling, all kids learn how to model is monkey see, monkey do. Versus don't just listen to my words. If you can see me do it, there's power in proximity. If you see that, then you can then start to model and adopt that, and things really start to shift.
This episode is brought to you by Voyages Counseling, the mothership of the Voyage Cast. Life has its ups and downs, and sometimes we all need a little help navigating the tricky parts. And that's where Voyages Counseling comes in. Our team of licensed therapists are here to provide support and guidance, helping you to gain clarity and confidence as you move forward. Whether you're working through challenges improving your relationships or focusing on your personal growth, Voyages Counseling offers care that's tailored to you. We're committed to making sure every step you take feels meaningful and manageable. And if you're ready to take that step, visit voyagescounseling.com to learn more or book your first session. You don't have to go it alone. And, by the way, we do take most major insurances. Just thinking through everything, the book sort of reflects that personal legacy of yours too, right? Like, you come from a background of some dysfunction in your family, but now you're making a difference in other people's lives. You're writing books to make a difference. Children 100% learn who they are, how to be from their family. It's a miracle when they come out of it unscathed, especially when it's dysfunctional. And I mean, maybe literally a miracle. So tell me a little bit about, I know you have some books coming next. You got you mentioned it in the beginning, you got number 2 coming. I think you said before to me that you've got like 4 in the wings.
Yeah. So basically I have this one, Kingz and Queenz Part 1, and then this publisher has Kingz and Queenz Part 2 right now. Okay. That book is called Understanding, and it's just a way deeper dive in really helping people understand more of the dark side of the psyche. So there's light and darkness in all of us. Yeah, and it's really helping people to understand more of where and why those dark sides are coming out, and why the shadow is trying to present itself in ways to help present change. We don't understand the projection that's happening there. I'm trying to help people really understand different archetypes and understand themselves. Yeah. As well as really my goal, again, is to eradicate domestic violence and emotional abuse. If we have enough understanding and awareness in the world, we can get rid of these things. That's one of my heroes is Martin Luther King Jr. And he had a dream, and I have multiple in that same way. And so that's book 2. Book 3 is Kingz and Queenz Part 3. Honestly, I would have put those chapters in book 2, but this one's already so long as it is. My publisher said that they're too long. He was like, they're too long. It's intimidating. A lot of people are scared by the size. Book 3 is, I have like 5 chapters done. This one's actually 41. And so,
what's your recommendation then for the reader?
Read it as much as you want and practice the exercises. So you can read, if you sit down and read 4 chapters, excellent. Just use the practical exercises at the end of that. And pick and choose which ones you want to practice throughout the week, because you're getting the knowledge no matter what. And then you're cementing home the neural pathways by the practice. It's like going to a coach to learn how to shoot. And if you're shooting like this constantly, you're not going to do anything. But if you go into the gym and practice shooting with your elbow in, eventually you're going to then get it. And that's kind of the tip. So you can get as much knowledge as you want. Just practice in between. And then, so that's there's book 2, then book 3. And then book 4 is on how to parent. It's a parenting book. I have 80,000 words right now done. Oh my gosh. I'm pretty
You're
close.
A machine.
I appreciate it very much. Momentum. It's a compound effect. Once you have the confidence and you're good at something and feel good, it starts to just flow. And it starts to come. And I get in these relaxed states and just start to just go.
Just comes out.
And it does. Kind of like when we're in session, you don't really recognize what you're doing when you're saying it in a moment.
Exactly.
It just comes. And that's kind of where I am. And then I actually, since we met, I've started book 5. And I know, it's crazy. And I was in prayer, I'm meditating, and I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden I just felt like this download came to me, and I popped up in a compulsion, and I just started writing, and it's actually a novel, it's a fiction.
Wonderful.
It's the first time I'm going to dive into that realm, and it's so creative. It's got dragons and mermaids and pirates and king, and it's so much fun.
Well, you get to bring all that metaphor that you love to use clinically, and you just get to go and have fun in this playground of imagination.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's so wonderful.
It's so much fun. It's really just a healthier way to spend time than to be scrolling, or I'm really diligent with how I spend my time and what I try and spend my time in. It's all we have, and so why not just use it to try and benefit the world the best that we can?
Yeah, amen to that. So you mentioned too some of your other creative endeavors. You like to write poetry as well, is that correct?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So are you going to publish anything in that vein too? Or?
I have a bunch, and a bunch of people have been like, when are you going to publish? Eventually, sure, it'll probably come out.
Yeah.
And
that'd
be
cool.
Kind of, I actually put it all together too, and I just haven't yet.
No, fair enough, man. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably have to get you back on when the next book comes out.
I'd love to.
As soon as we can, because that would be so much fun.
I'd love
to dive deep into this stuff. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share to the listeners about this book, about your practice, maybe how to find you?
Yeah, for sure. For people, just know that you're worthy. Know that you have worth, you have purpose, you have value. If you're on this planet, you're listening to our voices, you have a purpose, you have worthiness, you have hope. Like you might not understand why and what's happened to you, but there is purpose behind these situations. I go into growth mindset and a fixed mindset and more of why bad things happen more in the second book versus just kind of understanding our perception and our thinking in this. And then really, really healthy strategies and mindset shifts to get out of it in the second book, which is incredible. But know that you have a purpose. Know that you have, if you're here, there's reason why you're here. It's not just to drink. It's not just to smoke. It's not just for drugs or pleasure. It's you have a purpose. You might not know what it is yet, and that's the training ground. So know that and believe that. Please, if you hear anything, you have worth. And in that, Mother Teresa said that if you're too busy judging people, then you never have time loving them. Or you'll never have time to be able to love them. And in that space, just know that so many people judge each other, and that's not because you're unworthy. That's not because you're not worth it. That's not because you're not good enough in any way. It's something else inside of them, and more than likely they're shadow projecting.
Right. And that's true. That's exactly correct. People tend to project out their own BS onto others and to hurt them. And it does confuse us if we hear it enough. And we start believing these negative thoughts. So I hope the listeners can hear what you're saying, that you do have value and worth. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, of course. And then my website's bcfft.com, which is Belief Center for Family Therapy. So bcfft.com. I have the book on there. The book's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I have some videos and different pieces of just self-help pieces. I'm working on some meditations, actually, that'll be guided meditations that will be on there for free. There's my blogs on there. I have a TikTok too. I don't actually run it. I don't even know what the name of it is, if I'm honest.
When's the audiobook going to come out?
I'm working on that. It's down here, and I'm working on it.
That's near and dear to my heart.
Appreciate that. I'm working on it. I actually today in meditation decided I was like, I have to spend 3 hours a week for the next 90 days, and I'll have it done.
Perfect.
And so, and that's my goal, and to have it out and done in the next 90 days. I'm narrating it. I'm doing that process. So
perfect. It's kind of nice too, because like people who meet you or know you, there's kind of that association. They'll get to know your voice. They'll get to trust you over time. And if they hear that voice, it's meaningful to them, even in the narration. If it's fiction, that might be something you find some other person, right, in your novel that you're working on. Unless you're a good voice actor, I don't know.
I don't know yet either. We'll see.
We'll find out.
Feedback. It's for sure.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
well, Dupre,
I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much, man, for coming on. I really appreciate the work you're doing. I appreciate the book you're putting out. Like we've said many times, anything that's practical that I can get into somebody's hands, that's going to be the key for more or less to help, as I said in the intro, beyond the office, because that's something you can take with you. That's something you can do in real time in your real life. But kind of to tie it into your own discipline of writing and creating, like you have to put in the reps.
Yes.
If you want to change the way you're doing life and have better relationships, you got to put in the reps.
Yeah, you have to put in the time.
You got to be the Kobe of your life, right?
Exactly. The mama mentality. And so you reap what you sow. And so we constantly are reaping what we sow in different ways. If we're constantly hurting our partner, of course, and not meeting each other's needs, of course, then there's going to be a negative effect on the other side of that. And so there's so many of these little practical pieces. If we can understand that we're sowing into our partner every day. We're sowing into them in every moment that we're with them. And then sowing into them when we're not with them and what we're doing.
For sure.
And so and that impacts things. And in the second half, I talk all about communication, how to understand how to communicate, different patterns of how we're miscommunicating real quick, and just like how and why those processes work, why the neurosis happens, the attachment anxiety, the paranoia. I go into all of those pieces. I go into like different aspects of fairness and why we're expecting things, the 4 pillars of miscommunication. There's tons and tons of practical ways to learn how to communicate to get your needs met, and to understanding power struggles and why, which goes to Gottman and some of his research and what happens there, and then how to get out of those. And then again, practical examples of how to get out of these, situations that are just really hard to get out of and navigate, and which most people have no idea, especially young couples. Anyone of any age can really benefit from this. Yeah, and so it's not just people that are young. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, when's the next book coming out?
Honestly, it's with the publisher. They're in the process right now. So I honestly don't know. And
all right, well, you got to let me know so we can get you back on for the next book.
Excellent.
And we can talk about that one too.
Cool. I'm excited.
But it's been great to talk to you, Dupre. I've really appreciated this and appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate you and what you're doing as well.
Thanks, brother. All right, well, that's it for this episode of the Voyage Cast. Thank you so much for tuning in again. And don't forget, if you need more help beyond the office, we've got a ton of great content for you on our website. We got blog articles. We've got more podcast episodes, tips, tools, all kinds of stuff for you. Tune in, give us that 5-star rating, and don't forget to subscribe so you're updated as soon as new content comes out. If you do think what we're providing has value, man, share it with your friends. Send it over to people that you hate, people that you love, anybody. Maybe that crazy neighbor that you have, send it over there. Maybe the people with the, the marriage that's failing, maybe that's you. Check out the content. Get to know it. Read new books. We got a new book advertised today, Kingz and Queenz. Check it out so you are not alone on your journey of health, well-being, and improvement of your relationships and holding on to those things that are most important to you.